You tell yourself there's no reason to worry. You follow steps because everyone else is. And that's how you hand over control without even noticing. The shard describing Flight 1222 doesn't start with panic. It starts with routine. And at first, there's nothing unusual about the flight. No warnings, no alarms, no panic. Just a routine departure from Night City. A transport full of contractors, workers, and men traveling alone. The kind of people who don't draw attention because their lives never have. And according to the shard, the flight lands without incident. No turbulence, no emergency procedures, and no deviation from its approved route. Everything operates exactly as intended. The passengers disembark, the clearance logs are updated, and the arrival data registers as complete. And then, nothing happens. There's no follow-up records. There's no confirmed destinations beyond the terminal. There's no public trace of where these men go after stepping off the transport. They didn't vanish into thin air. They passed through the system. And once they do, they aren't seen or heard of again. The official explanation never crystallizes into anything solid. Administrative delays, incomplete paperwork, jurisdictional gaps between agencies that never quite overlap. See, each answer sounds reasonable on its own, but together, they form silence. And see, what's unsettling isn't necessarily that people disappear. It's how easily everyone accepts how it happens. Because nothing about the system appears broken. The tickets were valid, the security checks cleared, the logs filed, archived, and approved. And from the outside, everything works exactly as designed. And that's the part that people miss. Because no one on the flight broke the rules. They didn't sneak through checkpoints. They didn't resist instructions. They all followed procedures. They trusted authorization. And they moved where the system told them to move. And maybe that's why what happens next leaves no resistance behind. Because resistance requires suspicion, and suspicion never feels necessary until it's already irrelevant. See, this isn't a story about villains hiding in the shadows. It's about how harm occurs without confrontation. Because when a system doesn't need to threaten you, it just needs you to cooperate. Because see, most people can't even remember the last time that they questioned something labeled as routine. You queue when you're told, you sign what's already filled out, and you accept delays without any explanation. And it's not because you're weak, because that's how proximity to power works. It conditions you to normalize small surrenders until they don't even register anymore. And the men from that flight, they don't get a moment of realization. There's no alarm where they suddenly understand what's happening. There's just a point where the process stops returning things. I mean, there's no paperwork updates. There's no handoffs back into civilian life. And there's no clear boundary where authority ends. Because the records say that they arrived. Then the records stop caring. And the city, it keeps moving. And see, that's the part that should bother you. Not because it's cruel, but because it's familiar. Because if you're being honest with yourself, you've given up things in the same way. Not your life all at once, just pieces, your time, or your judgment, or your voice. And you tell yourself it's temporary, that someone else knows better, that the rules exist for a reason. See, you don't resist because nothing feels violent. And that's when the trade is finalized. You don't lose control in a dramatic moment. You lose it quietly when you stop insisting on understanding where authority ends. See, you call it trust. You call it being reasonable. You call it not making a big deal out of things. You call it cooperation. But I call it math. And it all adds up. Because every time you defer responsibility, somebody else assumes it. And authority, once it's claimed, is rarely returned without friction. Sometimes not even then. And the men don't disappear because of a catastrophe. They disappear because the system successfully transfers them into spaces that you can't see, where accountability isn't required and questions don't follow. Because control doesn't need a spectacle. It needs access. It needs compliance. And it needs permission that you didn't realize you were granting. And the worst part isn't that the system takes advantage of that. The worst part is that the system doesn't need to hide it. This shard doesn't end with answers. There's no names, no public reckoning, and no closure. Just a record of people who arrived exactly as planned, and they were never returned. See, people don't vanish when systems fail. They vanish when systems work, and no one thinks to interrupt them.